Well, I hope you guys are having a good Friday. This week we are doing a series on 5 of the common names of God in the Bible. And today, the one that we were talking about is Jehovah Rapha, also known as the God who heals. It says here in Exodus chapter 15, verse 26, "If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Now, the context here is the Israelites were wandering through the wilderness, and they came to a land where the water that they found to drink was very bitter. And so instead, God was able to provide water for them in an alternative way, healthy water. And then after that, he gave this ordinance that says, if you obey me, I will not put any of these diseases on you. Now, these diseases that he's referring to are the diseases that the Egyptians had to deal with as part of the 10 plagues, such as the boils and tumors that they experienced. Now, it's important for us to understand that this verse doesn't mean that God always heals us. Just because God can heal us doesn't mean that he will always heal us. This principle doesn't apply today the same way that it did in the Old Testament. This idea of God not putting diseases on us or healing those of us if we obey him, or always putting diseases on us if we disobey him. Listen to what it says here in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. This is Paul talking. It says, "Unless I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Now, there is some debate in terms of what this thorn is referring to, whether it's an actual physical infirmity that Paul dealt with or some other trial that was thrust upon him. But regardless, I don't need to share these verses with you guys to tell you that God doesn't always bring healing into our lives. Many of you guys, I'm sure, have loved ones who have suffered from some chronic illness or terminal disease such as cancer. And despite praying for God to do a miracle and remove that disease from that loved one that you know, unfortunately, that person has still passed away and God hasn't performed a miracle and removed that disease from them. I work in the ICU where I see patients die every week. Despite having people in the hospital and loved ones of those patients constantly praying for them, God doesn't always cure them. And we see the same thing here in this passage. But although God doesn't always heal us of our physical diseases and other trials that we're dealing with, what these verses here in 2 Corinthians 12 do tell us is that God does give us the power, the strength, and the peace to be able to deal with those physical diseases, infirmities, and any other trials that we deal with. And most importantly, what this also reminds me of, this concept of Jehovah Rapha, the God who heals, is that one day we will no longer be on this planet if we are a child of God, if we are put our faith and trust in what his son did for us when he died on the cross for our sins. One day we'll be in heaven, and we'll be in a place where there's no more pain, no more suffering, no more tears. And the reason for that is because of the ultimate thing God did to heal us. In healing us from the worst thing that we could possibly have, and that's having this problem of sin, where if we don't put our faith and trust in Jesus, then we will ultimately spend all of eternity separated from God. And so we can rejoice in that, knowing that God is the God who heals, that the greatest thing that he has healed us from is our sin, and possibly having to spend eternity separated from him. Thank you guys so much for joining today, and we'll see you here tomorrow.